Welcome everyone, and thank you all for being here for the budget consultation process. So firstly, just a couple of apologies. I realise that there was a late change of date, and we do apologise for that. That won't be the case going forward. Secondly, this consultation process has been challenged by the fact of the late declarations after the local government elections. So we've got quite a compressed budget period. So if you can just bear with us during that, it's probably not in a format that we will ever repeat again. In actual fact, my belief is that the consultation process will probably begin right after this budget has been announced, and we work towards that over the coming year. And in terms of budgets, you may recall I spoke previously and during the election campaign, it's going to be about it's going to be about transparency and accountability for you. So what does that mean in terms of transparency? Numbers that make sense to you. What's of value for you to get out of the budget? If those numbers make sense, you can see how your money's being spent. And secondly, with that process is also restoring the authority to your elected representative that's here tonight, Councillor Amanda Hay. Thank you for being here. And Councillor Hay will obviously no doubt talk to you about the budget and your expectations. Well, secondly, consultation. It's about listening to you and putting the issues on the table. So for you to raise those in terms of how your money's being spent and what the priorities are that is actually needed. Not necessarily a want or a wish is a nice thing, but what is needed, and for that, for council to align with your needs. Now, I should have also introduced and thanked our officers for being here tonight. General Manager Chris Gray, General Manager Oliver Pring, and our CEO, David Keenan. Thank you all for joining us.
John's here as well. John Rutledge.
And John Rutledge, sorry John, up the back, I didn't see you there. Thank you very much for joining us. And unfortunately, I will stay as long as I can, but I'm double booked. So, but I do look forward to seeing you soon, very, very soon down the track. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Oliver. But thank you very much for coming along tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. I guess welcome everybody, and thank you for taking the time tonight to come in and certainly have this conversation with the officers so that we can capture any of the feedback and any of the suggestions that you may wish to put forward. Councillor Crine? So as the Mayor pointed out, this is our second consultation when it comes to budget, and I think there's only about 4 councils in Queensland that actively do the consultation with their constituents around the budget process. Unlike the last year's process, we did have a draft budget that we went out with for consultation purposes, but that was a process that went out with the endorsement of the council. Given where we are in the cycle, officers drafted the budget around November, December, and that was based on the existing parameters. And given the late declaration and the current period of onboarding for the new councils to come on, obviously there's significant change within that council. So we go through a meticulous process of going through all the ins and outs of what makes up a budget and taking on board all the commentary and suggestions from the elected members to try and get to a position of having a draft budget at least there for consideration. So we differ from the previous position because that's the nature of the beast is, whilst the officers had draft budget ready to go, it hasn't necessarily had the time or the airtime to provide to the elected members to allow them to gain an understanding of it. So the intent of the budget consultation this year it was sort of a challenge. We went about it thinking, can we go ahead given where we are with the circumstances? Or do we just go out there and say, let's, given the circumstances, we're not going to do consultation this year? But one of our initial discussions when the council's elections were declared, and we went out there and spoke to the elected members and said, here's some options in terms of how we can get about and do some consultation, with the main emphasis being getting that feedback and getting those submissions to allow, not just for this budget coming up, the 24-25 budget, but to help shape some of those strategic thinking for the councils to consider. Because one of the other key tasks that this new council will be undertaking is a review of some of those strategic documents around the corporate plan to make sure, from what the community has provided, that corporate plan aligns with the expectations of the community. So, there could be a possibility that council reviews that, there may be some changes, and that trickles on down to the operational plan and subsequently the budgets that support those. So there's a whole piece around the strategy piece where as elected members, they wish to go on and take on board all the commentary and go down that different path. But once we get to that stage, as Mayor indicated, I think there's opportunity to further improve where we go with these consultation purposes. So to do the consultation, what we envisage or what we provided, what we put forward to the elected members was around, you would have noticed in the recent times, Council published and launched the service catalogue. That was to give some understanding of the types of services that Council provides and some of the ins and outs and complexities of some of those services. Going, the further iterations of the service catalogue will then align the cost matrix to deliver some of those services so that there is a direct correlation from the level of service or the types of services and level of service to the budget. At the moment, capturing all these services, there's an innate sort of understanding that the current levels of service are what's contained in the budget, and this consultation along with the input from the elected members would be undertaken to allow any review of those services and or consider some of the cost efficiencies of some of those. So the next stage of the service catalogue will have the monetary figures into it, so that, for budget purposes, from the finance team, it makes things easier rather than looking at budget statements and journal ledgers and everything else. What the council should be able to be providing is the levels of service and whether or not they are to increase or they are to reduce, and subsequently then there's an impact on those in terms of the way the budgets are set up. So that's where we're heading down. But part of the consultation this year is around identifying some of those key services, and one of our key diagrams is around for every $100 of rates where that funding is distributed and divvied up. So we've got a part of the infographics here is, you'd be familiar with this. This is the current settings. Whilst we don't have a draft budget to provide you, currently in the 23-24 budget, this is what the distribution of funds are. So for every $100 of rates, you can see how in the high level view, how that's distributed amongst the key services and key functions within that council deliver. For example, library services we're in today, for every $100, the various libraries and outreach services and mobile libraries that we provide, $4.66 it goes towards funding these services. Similarly, you'll see the lion's share of the funding is in with the roads and infrastructure network. Now, I'm sure with our network of around 1,800 kilometres of sealed and unsealed roads throughout the region, I'm sure you could double that, and Chris would still require more to sort of to maintain all those all the expectations that everyone sort of requires. So that's one of the key is to understand at the moment where and how for every $100 of rates, how the funding is distributed to provide those core services within council. So part of the consultation, it's seeking that the community members, and again I'll just go to those that are familiar with the council's engagement platform. Let's talk Scenic, and thank you for those that participated in the last engagement around the sports and rec programs that closed recently. I must have touched on it, just went offline. Anyways, the platform that we use for the engagement is Let's Talk Scenic Rim. There's an opportunity to go onto that platform and access it, and subsequently fill out the criteria as required as part of this engagement. Alternatively, we do have a number of forms, manual forms that have been printed out like we did last year, where individuals and community members are able to make a direct submission as well. And we've got Nicola and Lisa to stay behind to give you some assistance in receiving some of those consultations. So, as you said, it's a fairly straightforward process. I'll get Nicola to go and open up one of the. So this is what the feedback form is. So of those services that we put previously, the consultation is asking for the community members to rank from 1 to 9 where they feel the priority services are in terms of those key functions. And then similar to last year's, which we received around 41 submissions towards the budget last year, and the majority of those, I think it was 38 out of 41, would have been around consideration for new projects and/or increase in levels of service, and some of those to mind, parks and sports facilities, lightings and whatnot, along with extension of the pool season. And I think this year, as a flow-on effect from that, council trialled to extend by 1 month the opening season for the pools, and now a subsequent report will be provided to council in terms of the cost benefits around that and the number of take-ups, so that if that is being considered, the councillors will have all that necessary information to make an informed decision to see whether that's incorporated as part of the normal services going forward. So the second part of the engagement piece is to get those submissions towards any projects on any other services that are currently you feel that are not recognised or that need flagging to councils. We did go through an extensive process today, so we're about 3 sessions into the budget workshops with the elected members, and we went through some specific listings today around submissions where the council's elected members have gone out and undertaken some of the engagement, some consultation only with their respective areas, and some ideas were put forward. So there's certainly some work that's going to be undertaken to review whether some of those submissions and how they currently align with current budget timings and everything else. So any projects that you would like to submit, you either go onto our Let's Talk Scenic Room platform, or come see one of the staff members after this meeting, and they can provide you some hard copies of the formats to allow. That's pretty much what we've got to say, and I guess reiterate that it's a different position as to what last year's delivery was when we had a draft budget for consultation. We had the headline figure there, what the rate would be, but given the complexities and timing of this year, we're not at that stage, and what we're doing is trying to seek some feedback around priorities, and also some of those allow for any further submissions toward projects council elected members should be considering or should be notified of. I'll now open the.
Just talk about the environment we're operating in.
Oh, okay. One of the sort of questions, initial questions that was raised was around some of the complexities. Obviously, we've just spoken about the timing of the elections and the impacts on the budget. But when officers are compiling some of these budgets, we're still taking into account some of the supply logistics that we're still coming out of the tail end out of the early 2020s, associated with COVID. We're seeing some sort of back to normalisation around that, but it's still we're still seeing a great deal of impact on the council's ability to deliver some of those works due to one reason or another. Where the labour market's still a little bit tight, even though there seems to be a bit of a turnaround there. So for the sort of logistics around the supply of materials and services is also, we're still seeing the impacts of that, along with continued weather delays. We're seeing constant rains that are hampering all best paid plans to try and get that restoration work. So, over the last 4 or 5 years, we're still delivering some of the tail end works associated with the summer 19 bushfires. So, it's been a prolonged effect on that. One of the key things when we did started putting the draft budget together, we had some fluctuations around the CPI. CPI back in when the budget was being put back together around November, December quarter last year, were around the 4.2%. what we've just seen at the end of the March quarter is that those CPIs come down to about 3.4. So that's requiring a revisit of some of those calculations where some of the costs based on indexation are requiring a little bit of a refresh. So, we're seeing some of that. I'm just trying to remember what we're at the tail end of our current EB, and in I think January next year we'll commence a new EB. Council, in terms of timing wise, the current EB was done at a time where relatively low rates were put through. We're seeing some councils that are going through the EB processes now that are double-digit increases. EB enterprise bargaining agreements. So that's the agreement between employees and respective unions and the council as the organisation hirer. So, as I said, we're seeing some councils do that EB enterprise bargaining process now, and we're seeing increases of around 10% or more. We're on the last year of the EB, and what the council and the unions and the employees were able to sign off was around 3.5%. But that may change depending on what the process looks like. And another sort of measure that council utilises, I mentioned about the CPI. That's generally the consumer price index, which is applicable across the board. Council, through local government associations in Queensland, have developed another index that's specific to local governments in terms of the price indicators when it comes to the ongoings and deliveries of services when it comes to business-related aspects associated with council. They've estimated that CPI, that council cost index, of about 3.9% for the 2025 financial year. So for 24-25, they're seeing that council should be looking around 3.9%. I mentioned the March quarter CPI was 3.4. So what LGAQ have indicated is based on services and materials that are specific to council delivery. The council cost index, you're looking at at least a 3.9% increase on current costs. There was a couple of other things that we sort of raised on, but I know that they'll be put forward. One of those is around the cost shift. We have queries around where we're currently going through a process where we're trying to examine what the total impact to council is. At the moment, everyone may be aware the fire ants. There's a task force agency that's aimed at tasked at eradicating the fire ants, and that's currently funded by a number of other states. Obviously, that started in Brisbane. They're trying to contain the fire ants within the SEQ from spreading all throughout Australia. So a number of other state governments have contributed towards this task force, but some of those governments have now pulled back and said, well, they're not seeing over 20 years or so, they're not seeing a result. They're pulling back their funding, and which is resulting in that task force going back to council, approaching council, saying, well, council, you've got to be responsible now for identifying and treating fire ant outbreaks on council-controlled parks, gardens, open spaces, and lands, but also on the road network. So all on the shoulders of council-controlled roads, council would need to treat those accordingly. Now, that's what we call a cost shift to council. They're shifting that service from 1 July to council. At the moment, we're still trying to identify what the impact is. Obviously, trying to understand the extent of where the treatments are requiring to allow council officers to plan that as part of our normal work, but then to understand what additional cost that will be to council. So the state government will change legislation and say, councils are tasked with controlling fire ants on their own lands, but they certainly won't be contributing any dollars to assist in that program. That's from a council perspective. We don't know yet what the end game is in terms of individual landowners. We're seeing in some areas of the Scenic Rim talk where in the past the agency, the task force, would go out to individual landowners and would treat the fire ants, but now they're pushing that back and saying that the onus is on the individual landowner to treat. So I did say that although there's no money for the interim, the task force will be providing council with some bait. That's not guaranteed. It's going to be forever. It's sort of just a quick step. So, council has to explore identifying the nests, treating them, doing the necessary GPS reporting and everything else. So that's just another added. I'll put over to Dave now. So,
Just really quickly, there's one other thing that comes into play. There will be a state government election in October this year. There will be a federal government election in the next 12 months. So there'll be two very close elections occurring, which means there will be difficulty in getting funding because they will go into, their own caretaker period, where they will then turn around and come out with a suite of new programs, with a suite of new criteria that you'll have to be able to address to get funding. We will also keep going down the path of trying to see an increase in the level of financial assistance grants, FAGs, as they've been going for many, many years. At the moment, local government only gets 3 cents in every dollar that's generated in tax, yet we deliver a lot more than the other levels of government. So 3 cents in every dollar, it's not a huge amount. The other one, just quickly, the challenge we've also had is recruiting staff at the moment. There were, I'm going to say, over 60 vacancies we have at this point in time, which makes it difficult to deliver works on the ground and to go through the very legislative requirements that we're also required to do as well. We're not the only council in that situation. If I use Toowoomba as an example, they're 200 short, which makes it really hard to deliver services full stop. It also means that a lot of the staff are very transient and will go where they can get paid the most, which is what they're doing, and we're not paying the most. Okay, so I'm going to hand back to Oliver quickly.
I'm just going to say that's basically, there are a couple of the big items that were raised at the Bay Desert and the Boona forums. The opportunity now is to pass the microphone around to field any sort of questions that the officers may be able to field and provide necessary responses and or put forward any of your suggestions that you're considering in putting forward. Lee, have to use 2 minutes.
Take them an overall.
Sorry, I forgot to mention, like the other sessions, we're recording the vision at the front here, but we're also taking on board the audio so that the session tonight is being captured. That's just for awareness. If you don't agree to having your voice captured, please advise one of the staff members, and we can then look at alternative ways to capture your query.
I'm Roland Zreika, council officers, Mayor Tom. I've had 20 years in local government as a councillor and deputy mayor, and I base my comments tonight on my past experiences. One thing I think, we've got 2 councillors here tonight, and one thing that always come up in our budgets back in my day was, you've got to remember the ability of people to be able to pay the rates. And I only say that because just recently I met a lady on a dog walk, and she's had to sell her home and go into rent because she can't afford the rates here. I know nothing can be done for this year's budget, but I'd like to see some input into research. It's obviously the mountain rates, our general rate is very high compared to other areas. And there are a couple of options available. A lot of the hierarchy object to them, but you can have financial divisions or differential rates. And I hope these will be looked at. My other concern, I have raised it with the existing councillors, is the infrastructure fund. It's whacked on every year, $500 per ratepayer up here. I don't know what the rest of the shire's like, but there doesn't seem to be any account for it. Nothing about it in the books. And I can't see why that can't be deleted from the budget. That could be done this year, but hopefully next year it's looked at and got rid of, and some explanations for it.
Just on that one there, I guess that's, as I said before, 51 out of every $100, $51 of rates is attributed directly to the roads and transport infrastructure. That separate charge, that basically earmarking the fare component of any generator. It's called a separate charge, so it's charged on top of the generator. But it's either you can either consolidate, but at the end of the day, it's earmarking that for that transport, and that's what the purpose is. I think on the rate sides and also on your rates flyers, it indicates the purpose for what that separate charge is for. But it's 6 of one, half of the other. I guess, and it would certainly give the council's understanding around that and how that works in the equation of things. But it's considered as part of the generate. But it's for that specific purpose of funding the transport and network infrastructure.
I feel it would be better if you just wiped that and had your general rate covering all your expenses instead of this other account. Must cause problems in your office.
The purpose of that was to sort of, to section off about 3-4 years ago. Pre-COVID, we used to get revaluations, property revaluations, and we saw the valuations on Tamborine go through the roof, in terms of the sort of, obviously, people, your own valuations, whereas other parts of the scenic route would remain at normal. And to try and dampen some of that fluctuations, so that $500 is a single charge, so it's not dependent on any of the valuations. So it was a strategy to try and dampen some of those increases. Otherwise, as you said, if we tried to just consolidate that as part of the generate, you'd see greater fluctuations when it comes to rates. So that portion of generate wasn't impacted by valuations, yet it still contributed towards the generate and funding that transport. That was a strategy around it at the time. But now we're seeing in more recent times, any part of the scenic room seems to be popular. So the revaluations are pretty much across the board when it comes to those. I do. I remember in my first couple of early budgets, you're only seeing drastic increases on the mountain, and Bodez and Boona staying level. And so trying to manage those fluctuations in a was a bit challenging.
Yeah, that's where specifically the mountain is at a disadvantage compared to the rest of the shire. And that's why I'm saying you should be having a look at a differential rate or a financial division on its own grounds. We seem to be the cash cow for the shire.
I think in terms of distribution, I'm not sure we did show, but it is the 5 divisions across, or 6 divisions across the region, other than they were all around the same in terms of what they contributed towards the overall generate. And top of my head, I was trying to, one division, they were all contributing around 18 to 20%, and one was around 16, 17%.
Yep, I can fully accept that. But on the mountain, we've got 2 main roads coming up and down the mountain, and most of our traffic and wear and tear is there. When you look at our general roads and things around the mountain, it's not a real big cost to this area. But we are lacking in a lot of other things, footpaths and things. If we could see an increase in the footpaths, improvement in some of our other facilities, we could probably accept our rate. But at this point in time, I cannot accept the rating system.
No, thank you, and certainly we will provide an update to the elected members around what those proposals are. Thank you. Just so that, obviously, 2 years ago, I think 2021, we had a valuation around October. When at the time when those valuations came forward, given that they all went up, council averaged those over 2 years. So this is 2024, 2025 is the last year. Council received a query from the Valuer General seeking whether or not we undertake, or whether they undertake another revaluation for this calendar year, normally towards the end of the year, and that will be applicable from 1 July 2025. There is a report going to council next Wednesday, where officers have endorsed going towards that. I guess one of the things in the budget is it's budgeted for, even though whether or not a revaluation is undertaken, council pays couple of $100,000 to the Valuer General Titles Office to undertake a maintenance of what we call the valuation role, even if they do a valuation or not. So it's in the best interest of the council to try and get a reval every year. That way then that sort of avoids those big peaks and troughs when it comes up in multi-years. 3-4 years ago, they used to do a valuation every 3 years. So you can see the complexities around leaving valuation 3 years, let alone we've managed to get that in 2 years. Given the fact that the council pay this amount every year, the council's certainly pressing to have the revaluations done every year.
Yeah, I'd like to speak. Roger. I've been living next to I've been on the mountain for about 25 years. When I first responded to this, it was purely on the sport and recreation plan, so that's why I'm here tonight. And you've already mentioned the swimming pool, so thank you for that, and thanks for looking at that. I've also looked at the infrastructure action plan since then. Obviously, you're looking at not necessarily just 1 month, because that kind of doesn't cut it. It needs to be annual, it needs to be year-round. Looking at this, you're talking about extending hours. Have you not considered my policy? My feedback, less days a week, less hours a week, just to accommodate those core groups, those being learn to swim, which is a critical part of the regional mountain swimming, the aquafit, which you feature in your plan, and also the lap swimmers and squat swimmers, which kind of got cut immediately for no reason. I think long term, it's a service, it's not a profit-making thing. And I think ultimately, as you're saying, a trial extension, as you get to looking at what works, what doesn't, look at the yield and the patronage and say, okay, early morning there's lap swimmers, later in the morning there's kids learning to swim, which is absolutely critical. Then you've got the aquafit ladies later on, the older demographic that you also address. Maybe don't open all day, 5 days a week, and then extended hours at the weekends. Just consider Monday, Wednesday, Friday, shorter hours, etc., etc. I mean, there's a lot of strategies that you can put to that. We've talked to the groups, and I'm not going to overtake over here for any longer. But certainly, moving forward, and I'll email again to say I'm more than happy to sort of talk to a few other people and just get some ideas of how this can work year-round. I mean, I'm from Sydney, and they're open all the time down there. Everybody goes to the coast. It's a good 2-hour round trip if you want to go down there for a swim and come back. I still push the key group of those kids. There's a lot of high school kids on this mountain that can't swim. The government provides 8 lessons a season, and that's it. No kid can learn to swim in 8 lessons, and then they're just left to their devices. And regional swimmers also have the most drownings as well, because kids don't have access to pools. I know out in Warwick, I think there is a year-round pool. I'm not quite sure. Somebody mentioned that. But please do consider that for all of those reasons. Look at the core groups, and as I say, when you start eventually look at that, and I know it's a small drip in the ocean compared to other things that I'll just put that. But the facility's there, the solar's there, everything's there, and I do think that put it out in times and days, you could probably consider annually rather than just that extra month that you need. People have annual passes down on the coast because this stops after 6 months. Maybe they'll come back to the mountain or to one of the single pools to actually go year-round.
Yes, I back that up. I've been swimming on the mountain for 40 years, and it's pretty awful when it closes for the winter and you have to go down to Nerang or Helens Vale or Coomera, and it takes an awful lot out of your time in the week, and an option 3 days a week would be more than adequate. Would be fabulous.
I think most people can do what they need to do 3 times a week, whether they're lap swimmers, no swim kids. But you know, I think of young mums, it stops, and then they've got to get the kids in the car, drive down the coast. It's just not convenient. But anyway, I say it's a minor thing compared to maybe all the other things, but please take it into consideration and don't. But I'll see here you've got short to medium, low cost action on your strategic action, so thank you for that. And also it's how you refer to as making waves, and so thank you for that.
I might just add, if I may, how many pools do we have?
6.
We have 6 with a total population in the municipalities around about 46. When you go to Coomera, we go anywhere down on the Gold Coast. They've got a few more people than us. So I think they're up to what? A catchment of 40,000 for one, 60,000 for one. More than happy to go back and have a look. This got raised last year. This is why we've responded and changed the hours. more than happy to go back and have another look. Remember that we don't actually manage our pools directly, they're obviously done by subcontractors. So we'd have to go and renegotiate with them to see how we go.
Oh, I understand that. And in your report, you said city events are important to consider that. Obviously, a lot of their people come off the mountain. There's people on the mountain that are fully qualified to run the pool, understand the chemicals and everything. So I guess it's just a matter of sort of looking for
If you have solutions,
yeah, absolutely.
please make those suggestions and we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, happy to do that. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, hello, I'm Ben Edgar. I've been on the mountain about 6 years. I just want to comment on the disaster management program, $1.10. I consider that what happened at Christmas time is there doesn't seem to be any actual looking at disaster management. I wasn't capable of it. I was actually out helping people clean their yards up, and I didn't get a chance to go and see it, attend any of the meetings that were held, but I was told that it was pretty bloody poor. I've worked in council as a building surveyor, and I'm also a firefighter, or a retired firefighter, and I've been involved in a lot of disasters, and that was just absolutely terrible. We need to, with the actual tornadoes, there should have been an army should have been involved a lot earlier than what it was. That wouldn't have taken any funding out of the council. And we need somebody that actually can deal with the different services like Energex. I run into a couple of Energex workers on a Saturday morning, which is 5 days after the event, and they said they had nobody on the ground. They said that we were just triaging to see what we're going to do. You know, if you've got somebody that actually knows the procedures for instigating the involvement of the army or other state authorities, I just feel that we're spending $1.10 for a disaster management program and it didn't seem to work.
Sorry, can we, where's the $1.10?
So just to clarify, I guess the $1.10 that's in there is council's administration of it. Yeah, there's about 1 or 2 positions, but that also includes the the funding and administration of the local disaster management group. And I guess without going on to the event proper that happened, I guess part of a couple of points that you just sort of raised is Energex. That particular event, I suppose, was in the middle of Christmas. Everyone was on holidays; they weren't necessarily expecting it. But part of the one of the key groups as part of the council's local disaster management group is the external stakeholders. That includes Queensland Police Service, Queensland Fire Emergency Service, Queensland Health, Energex, Urban Utilities, all those likes. If our region is hit by a disaster, all those relevant stakeholders come together. And I think that was understandable with the Energex, given that at the time it happened, I was still trying to do a roster call to try to get everyone back from holidays to come in and assist. So they were there, and obviously we've got no power over Energex, and certainly that's their sort of mandate to try and get the customers back up to speed. But the second part around the army, and it's more about the general engagement of the army. I wasn't talking about the group, but I guess the process in order to engage the army, the local disaster management has to go to another level, to the state disaster management group, and they're the only ones where they have the premier. We just can't go.
So can I go back? Contradicting some of the things here. The army turned up here without any instructions at all. They turned up and were told that they could go around and pick up branches that are on the ground, but not to do anything else. Why was the army really sent up here? To show there was some sort of presence. How many people were sent up as part of the army reserves? I remember it was 7. Happy to be corrected on that, more than happy to be corrected. There was some politics at play that went through this. We ended up with Disaster Relief Australia. We probably won't get involved with them again. Okay, they were meant to do works, they did not succeed in doing the works that were directed and working in a cooperative way with the other agencies. My hat off to Energex, they did a sensational job. They really did. Now,
I'm not accusing Energex of not doing a good job.
So, bear with me for a second. So the biggest issue we had were people getting encouraged to come up to the mountain while there were still wires on the ground and everything else. And we got enough rubberneckers doing that. Didn't need that. And there were certain parts of our organisation that should not have been encouraging that, but they did. All in all, is there room for improvement? There's always room for improvement. We are still continuing to roll out some of the programs on behalf of the state and federal government that dealt with that incident. Keeping in mind that there are still people obviously impacted by that as well. I might just hand over to Chris. Do you want to say a few words on this one as well?
Just with that, there is ongoing funding for a number of activities. You might see that there's still some trees and other hang-ups in some areas that still need to be addressed. We are funded through the QRA, who manage what is called the disaster funding, or DRFA, or the disaster relief funding arrangements, which is a 75% funded by the Australian government and 25% by the state government. We've been very fortunate that they've also acknowledged the impact to some of our facilities that otherwise wouldn't be normally catered for in an event like that, being our parks and our gardens, as well as some of our reserves. We certainly, from a council perspective, are looking at every opportunity to actually get the place back to some sense of normality. Having understood and been involved with a number of disaster events over, unfortunately, too many years, each one has their own set of complexities that the one before didn't necessarily have. And certainly, fortunately for me, I live in the western part of the region and saw the storm just go over, and it was a bit of rain and not a lot of wind. But certainly when I got the first phone call half an hour later, I didn't comprehend what had actually happened here until the next day. So the reality of it is you can only plan for so much, and you can plan for something like this and never see it again. So you've got to get the balance right, and the level of funding you need to put in is certainly, you try and aim at the right level, but sometimes you're not quite able to take on board every situation that comes along.
Yeah, thank you. I understand that, but the trouble is that we need to, or council needs to be very proactive in consulting with the federal and state governments to ensure that this doesn't happen again. Because I'm sure that if somebody invaded Australia, the army wouldn't be, they'd be on the ground in 24 hours. I'm sure they would have standby battalions that could have done some work. Like they've got high voltage electricians that could assist Energex. It's just, we can't do anything about what's happened, but maybe, I don't know whether you've got an emergency management officer in the council. Yeah. They should be consulting with the state and federal government to make sure this doesn't happen again.
So they did. Now keep in mind at the same time the issues were going on at Wunjil and Douglas. That's where the real focus was, at Wunjil, because those people had nowhere to live at all. And they were being brought back from the coast into Cairns, if I remember correctly. Same with Douglas. Douglas got much worse than us. They got landslips all over the place, and also their water and sewer fell out completely, given that they operate that. We have two officers that work in the emergency management or disaster management area. There is a new disaster management plan that's been reviewed and will probably go out for consultation as well. I agree with everything you're saying. As I say, we were a bit surprised with the people who were allocated to us. And again, I believe the military guys were here, the reserves were here for 2 days. If I'm not mistaken, I'm happy to be corrected. I reckon they were here for 2 days and they drove over the Bushmasters, if I remember correctly. And that was it. So even having a Bushmaster meant that they didn't have any capacity to pick up things, put them in the back and drag them around and all that sort of stuff either. Sometimes it's good. I'm always surprised to find out how small the Australian Armed Forces are. They are very small. And a lot of people have aspirations. There are bridge builders out there that they'll come in and do this, they'll come in and do that. There are small groups that do that within the army, not large groups.
I think, excuse me, I think most of the problem that we had during that recovery program, I don't know that, I think we've got rid of him. It won't be the same next time.
I think, prior to this event, I actually stood down as a local disaster coordinator, but a couple of years back, I just used a real example where I had my LDC hat, and I think we had some rains at Beachmont and Flying Fox Bridge got washed away. We knew that the Army had these special vehicles that could turn into a bridge. There was concern there because obviously that community was isolated. You couldn't get emergency services or anything else like that. Yet the Army said, yeah, we've got these vehicles that you can drive over, and they form a bridge to allow at least access there. Trying to elevate that through to the relevant parties. Now, those vehicles are available because everywhere else in the southeast was going through floods. They prioritised where those vehicles were, and obviously that was more prioritised in Brisbane, just in case somewhere in Brisbane was.
I'm sorry, just to give an example, we actually rang up Conundrum and turned around and said, can you give us a hand? And they said, we'll let people on holidays. I think there were 2 people at the whole of Conundrum. So again, that's a valuable lesson for us as well, in that we will go back and look whether it's appropriate to have skeleton staff on over the Christmas New Year period, or we should just have full staff on normal times, and they can pick their time and pick their annual leave at other points in time as well.
Yeah, I suppose it is that, I'm talking about future time because we've got to talk to the state and federal government. I would like to say got involved with Amanda about sandbags. I rang council and I was chasing some sandbags because of the rain event on New Year's Day. I got told I'll ring the SES. I rang the SES and they said ring your council.
It should be the SES, yeah.
Sorry?
It should be at this council it should be the SES. At other councils, it is council.
Yeah.
And this one's SES.
Yeah, no worries. I got them eventually, Amanda got them for me, but yeah, it was a bit of a concern because it involves a state-owned road and council. I've been to council about this flooding and they said go and see the main roads. I went to see the main roads and they said go and see the council. And then I got sent back to them and they just basically said, no, I'm not going to do it for you. So.
Just an aside, why is there such a staffing problem? I'm not saying about York, but just across the board. What's the issue given that people are struggling to afford to live?
Yeah, we're getting older. Okay, we are in an ageing workforce right across the local government sector. The average age at our organisation will be over 50, John. We are trying to get as many apprentices. At the moment, we're advertising for 3 diesel fitters, if I remember correctly. We already take on a lot of young people through apprenticeships and traineeships. There is good money being offered in remote areas at the moment.
Mining, the kids flying fire.
I used to work in Mount Isa, so I know only too well. I'll use an example in Mount Isa. If I'm working for Glencore, I get my voucher for him to come along and get a job. If he stays there 3 months and doesn't play up, I get 20 grand. Okay? And this is where the competition in the marketplace, and please don't think this is just skilled engineers and everything else. We can't get enough labourers. And there's not a lot of qualifications about being a labourer. We can only try and pay them good money, and good money is offered in other places as well. It goes back to the cost shifting that was spoken about by Oliver, so they're putting more on us, especially legislative stuff, so people will often have a go at council and say you've got too many people sitting at desks. Well, we've got too much legislation now that's been developed responding to anything from pest, plants and animals to housing and everything else through there as well. I'm not sure where all these builders are going to come to build all these houses everyone keeps talking about, because we can't even find, as I say, labourers at this point in time. What we can do is try and sell the benefits of the region, become competitive in what we're offering, and do it innovatively, because I can't go above the enterprise marketing agreement either, because that's already been agreed to, and the awards are in there, and the conditions are in there, and everything else. So I'm a bit stuck on that one as well. So I've got to look at every option. John needs to look at every option we possibly can to try and recruit and retain staff. I'm not going to personally teams if the staff member leaves after 12 months. If we get a good yield out of that person, they do a great job, I'm stoked, and it's better than having someone who's not doing very much, hanging around for a long period of time. So it comes down to doing a lot of that and presenting yourself as a council that is professional with good reputation and everything else.
It's just not the only thing, I guess, for the younger ones, is it? Apprentices, etc.
Well, I've carried the curse of local government onto my son, and he actually turns around and says, it is not a bad, he'll probably go into the private sector in some point in time, but at the moment it is challenging to get staff right across the board, engineers. But again, I put that focus back on labourers when we had that dashboard from LGAQ. Labourers was either number 1 or number 2. And they're the people you want mowing the grass, doing the slashing, making sure appropriate works are done, etc. That's the hard one. And they're the ones that you actually need to help in a disaster because they know how to use the heavy fleet.
Oh, yeah. They get paid more as a stop and go person.
We'll just ignore that.
It's not good for the lungs, though.
Coming back to your fire ant situation, we've got a big problem on the mountain, and unfortunately, when we phoned the correct people, we phoned them on the 2nd of April, we've never heard back. And when you talk to people on the mountain, we found 3 nests ourselves, and when we talk to other neighbours, they get told to pay for their own, do it themselves, and most people just say that the whole fire ant thing has been a complete disaster. And one of our local neighbours found about 13 acres, so we're inundated, and it really should be a priority.
So, thanks, Alison. Can I just build on what was being said by Oliver? We're going to go through a transition on the 1st of July, where we actually have started formally looking after our lands and everything else. This is a huge advocacy piece that needs to be presented by council, saying we're not going to take on this cost shifting. If we are taking on the cost shifting, here's what you have to give us. Because at this point in time, I'm also going to be in a scenario as these that John both know, that suddenly the union will come in and turn around and say, well, now these people are doing additional duties above and beyond what they were employed to do, so there'll be another cost that comes into play there as well. A concerted effort is required by all parties. The reports of fire ants coming in is significant, and keep in mind we're hypothetically not even a referral agency. The referral agency at the moment is the state government. The other people who are finding it particularly tough are the turf farms, who are starting to get fire ant infestations on their turf, which isn't going to help very much. If you're playing a game of Metricon and you fall on the ground and get bitten by ants, that'll keep you running. So all these key stakeholders need to be brought together to make sure that we can actually start doing a proper management. There is a review I only saw today that's been undertaken by, I'm going to say state government. I don't know if you guys saw that one, state or federal, who's doing a review of the invasive pests and plant strategy. And so fire ants needs to be incorporated into that one as well. So, yeah, please keep bringing the, what are they called? The task force fires. Yeah, I haven't got a lot of that.
We were told not to bag them. I did raise some commentary, but we're not bagging them tonight, so it's been observation and the reports.
It's been, your issue was raised at Pony, your issue was raised at Beaudesert as well as raised consistently.
Inefficiencies of the task force. Hello.
Just to backtrack to your comment earlier, did you say before that councillors were out doing consultation with community on potential projects, or did I hear that incorrectly?
No, more around they're out there talking to the constituents and having conversations, and similar these matters are being flagged, and the council, it's not just a once a year consultation. There's the opportunity all year round to get that. And it's not particular projects. It was more.
Sorry. The council has been asked. This is a new council. Yeah. The council has been asked, what are your priorities in relation to capital works, service delivery, and general improvements? So each of them need to contribute towards the budget. So Are they going back and talking to constituents formally on this? No. Are they going to things that they've had communicated to them in the past? That would be correct. And saying these are the ones that me and my community think are most important.
Yep, gotcha, thank you very much. Got a couple of questions here. Sorry, just gonna find where I'm up to here. Sorry, give me a minute. Sorry, we're on mountain time. Sorry. Has council put consideration to any budget to be put aside for capital works for the Tier 1 sporting sites within the city?
Yes, we certainly have. There is an allocation, an ongoing allocation of $500,000 year on year for sporting and other infrastructure improvements. What we're trying to do with that is trying to actually leverage other grants that they need contributions as well, which we've been somewhat successful in a number of locations within the Scenic room to actually have co-contributions to funding, whether it be lighting or other upgrades at those sites. So yes, certainly there is an allocation within of the proposed budget for that sort of infrastructure.
Okay, great. And has council done a costing on the running of day-to-day operations and management of these Tier 1 sites?
We have had a high-level review of what that may be as a cost, understanding that a lot of these facilities are actually managed by community groups and sporting groups, and sometimes those groups are cross over from soccer maybe to cricket and that sort of thing. And yes, we certainly have certainly looked at what it would cost for council to potentially take on those facilities.
Yep. And I mean, from a Tamborine Mountain Sports Association perspective, we'll be putting in requests for a business case to support the master plan. We'll also be looking for contributions from council for ongoing maintenance and operational costs. I think TMSA is the only Tier 1 site that's completely operational with over 1,000 members across 11 sports. We've been approached by 4 more sporting groups to utilise the Tamborine Mountain Association site, which would bring in an additional 250 members to that precinct. What we're saying is that as a small community-run and community-led organisation, our resources are stretched. We want to allow that space to be as utilised as possible for as many in our community, but I don't see how it is possible to take on additional burden, additional HR, additional PR, additional operational time on behalf of the council without any type of support to allow that to be delivered in a compliant and effective manner.
Yeah, and certainly we'll take on board your suggestion. Yes, we do have a number of Tier 1 facilities. We've got, we're looking at developing one in Bay Desert. We've currently have a couple of sites that we treat as Tier 1 at the moment. We certainly have the Tier 1 site at Burner, and do understand your particular situation and quite comfortable to look at what you put together as a submission.
Great. And in terms of those other Tier 1 sites out of Bay Desert, are you going through that process to identify that where the prime location will be? In terms of resources from within council, it's a question we asked last year as well through this process. What level or how many FTEs the council allocating to that resource to identify that site?
So we actually don't have a full-time FTE for that particular site. We did secure some external funding to allow us to engage a consultant to actually undertake some high-level review of what sports could be facilitated on particular lots of locations. So that work is, that work is ongoing. We do have a number of staff that they're key key roles are to work with community groups, not only sporting groups, but community groups, to understand the needs of us for the facilities that council provide to them, but they operate and manage. Certainly a space that the council has done quite a considerable amount of work on, and last year we put on an additional FTE, actually 2 FTEs over the last 2 years to facilitate and continue that discussion.
Yeah. Last question. And how do we receive feedback on this year's submission that we make? How will we have received? Because from TMSA, we submitted our response last year in the public domain at the primary school. We submitted electronically. I also attended the council chamber to present that to council in a paper-based format, and also we submitted it digitally. I think by the third follow-up to request a response, we're still waiting. So I just don't want to have to burn my personal time on chasing those matters next time, because I think you said before 39 out of the 42 were around sports and parks and recs and whatnot. So are we the only ones that didn't receive a response, or would there be multiple people or organisations that didn't receive a response?
No, well, the process that we'll follow this year is similar to last year, where the opportunity for the submitters is to personally come to council and submit that. But part of the agenda report, which then, a report goes out and it's part of the minutes, it actions and it details what council has taken, what council is intending to do with their particular actions towards those submissions. So I'll double check in terms of what was provided, but generally when council provides those minutes, I guess all those submissions had a response in regards to how council considered and what would sort of be getting done with that going forward. So I'll double check. So you'd have to be possibly familiar with council operations to understand that you need to look at those agenda items. Yeah, or the minutes. That's what I said. I'll double check in terms of what was sent out afterwards. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes.
Right, good evening. The intersection is quite loud, isn't it? Echoing. The intersection between Giesman Drive and Curtis Road is very dangerous. Just down from the information centre, like down that road, from Giesman Drive turning right into Curtis Road. We're just wondering, possibly, is it possible, please, for street lights, the very dangerous corner, and also at the pedestrian crossing. It's very, it will be good there if they can have like some lighting or something, because it is short.
Certainly, you can put forward that proposal. I think we are dealing with an intersection that intersects with the Department of Transport and Main Roads Road. We would have to certainly work with them with regard to where that would sit on their priorities. And I'm going to show my age on how many years I've been in local government, but 25 years ago there was actually a program where councils could put forward projects of that nature and actually partially fund them themselves and actually deliver them on DGLO roads. That program ended probably 20 years ago, unfortunately. TMR, like us, struggling with cost pressures and competing priorities as well. But certainly I wouldn't deter you from putting forward your proposal, and certainly we would follow that up with DTMR as well.
So who does that? So who would be sent to that place?
The Department of Transport and Main Roads, but if you were to submit as part of the budget process, we can certainly pass that on.
So one of the officers, yes?
Yes, sure.
Okay, please, I appreciate it. Thank you. If I could do it afterwards, just get that, just to, how do I say, active, but yeah, because it is very, how do I say, not good. Yeah, it's a...
That's when it goes to hospital.
Well, it's just, you know, with the information centre just here, so you drive down,
Okay.
And that's
you
like,
just turn right, you know, I think that's a shopping. There's a Curtis Road, and that's like a banana shape. But dear, it's happens.
We're competing with water tankers as
It's-
well on that dangerous intersection.
It's the hoons too, that all 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. around, and they use Curtis Road as a grade strip.
Okay.
It could be to 120 miles an hour by no separation, and then it slows down at the corner the other end of the school,
Yeah.
and that could be 4 nights a week.
Anywhere where there's an issue maybe with speed and that sort of thing, we don't police that, the police do, but we certainly, if we're made aware of it, we can certainly pass that information on as well. If there's a concern with the speed limit or something like that, we will do or undertake speed reviews. Unfortunately, the process can take some time. Generally, when I say some time, that's around 6 months, because it needs to then go through a review committee which has members of the police as well as Department of Transport and Roads in itself. So, but if anyone does have an issue with the speed on a particular road, certainly comfortable to take on board those issues as presented.
It would be like months and even no generation, years. Like you can literally, how do I say, if you plant a cop there, it would be, Johnny, respectful of their schedules, it would be, I'm assuming 20 kilometres from the bend going down the side. We all see lights too, actually, from 20 kilometres an hour right here. And I'm like under 45, so it's just, I'm like, I feel sorry for the car. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel sorry for the engines. You literally go up to 100, it could be 140, 120, something stupid. Then you hear it really go boom, 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 boom. Like fully go down again. Like it's insane.
You know what happens when these Americans kids?
It's in the turn, you get left or right at the intersection, school, you know, corners. But it's months and years, you know, like literally probably 3 times a week.
Okay.
It's like religiously, that, and then obviously the lights to be very beneficial. Very beneficial. It's such a shocking corner. Like, and it goes up from there back to the information centre, you know, with the old NAB building and sort of thing, banana roads sort of thing. But it's just one of those, respectful of
Do you have any more? Because we've got about 15
Yes,
minutes.
sorry. But that's it, thank you, appreciate it. Thank you, Minister. Thank you.
Can I just add one more? The most embarrassing thing about the mountain, I've only been here 3 years. I've only been here 3 years, and every time there's a rain event and the shops get flooded down there on the T road to go around to Curtis Falls or go down to the village. And I get mates family up from 1,000 miles, k's away, saying, how are you going, Rowan? Are you all right? You've been washed away. Why can't they put some decent culverts underneath that road? They only have, 3-foot culverts, raise it up. Those shops would never be flooded again. It must cost them fortunes. But to me, I feel embarrassed to live up the mountain and nobody's doing anything about it. But, I think that's one thing that should be fixed up around the mountain.
Firstly, thank you for the chance to comment, senior officers and councillors. Talking about landslides, well, the 4 houses that sit on the shelf road that damaged by landslides a couple of years ago, we saw many as the incessant rain keeps the landslides moving up. Thank you for this chance to make a rebid to council to reconsider its previous position and seek some funding as a new initiative and try and provide some relief fund for, unlike that lady who sold her house. We can't sell our houses, so we're stuck in these houses that are falling down with no form of redress for the moment. So it's up to council to be a one-of the process how they got to where we are. It just shouldn't be there. Those 12 houses that shouldn't be there. So I'd just like to put it to council that this be reviewed as a matter of priority for us, especially as we've got no hours to go.
It's Leon, right?
Yes.
Good. We should be organising a meeting with you and Terry and Stu and the other people probably in about the next 2 to 3 weeks. Hadn't forgotten, it's just the induction of these councillors has been very time consuming. Okay, so without a doubt.
How you going? My name's Peter and I run Pineapple Tours and the Hop On Hop Off bus. We started a program in October where we tested out a Hop On Hop Off shuttle. It was sponsored by some of the local businesses, Cauldron, Tamborine Distillery and St Bernard's actually chipped in for the driver's wages. That was so successful. We've invested a bit over $500,000 in new buses, a new website, new brand, and an app, which will be coming later in the year. The app basically facilitates the connection between public transport, existing infrastructure with the private hop-on, hop-off bus. Every bus we bring up here takes 20 cars off the mountain. So there's tourist traffic that clogs the mountain and the infrastructure, because there are unorganised tourists, uneducated tourists. So we're educating, we're teaching them the leave owner footprint principles. Don't take your rubbish with you, don't take anything else with you. They're getting the sustainability information, they're getting information that we don't like the water trucks up here, they're getting all the stuff. We've asked Tom Sharp, that we've spoken to everyone that will listen. We're trying to get the bus stops that are unused currently. There's no one using these bus stops, they're rotting, they're falling apart, they're gathering spiders and rubbish. The Chamber's happy to kick in a little bit, but we'd also like the council to step up and help. I'm happy to pay for the signs, we'll help them up off signage. Tourists will be able to get around the mountain using what will essentially be public transport. With council support, we could also offer free transport for over 67 years on that.
That sounds good. Can you pop down in writing everything
Yes.
you said there and put it in as part of this process? We'll see how we go. There is a similar activity occurring in Dana at the moment, where the school's also using it to try and get the kids to come along as well, and also looking at trying to provide seniors with an option on the bus as well. So more than happy to have a look.
I've already sent a 39-page documentation, and actually if we set it up as Tamborine as a use case, it can be replicated in any other region with no public transport.
That'd be a great idea to help take some of the mummies and delivering the kids in the morning, to get them off the road and just put in one bus.
Got a whole 9 minutes.
If you've still got 20,000 or so left in the budget, can you fix up the Alpine Terrace footpath, take the top rail off, just raise the 2 other ones up? That's all we need. When you look at the cliffs over at Springbrook, they've only got a fence that high, one rail. That's all we need on that. And don't spend so much money per metre when you build any more footpaths.
G'day, I'm Stu Wright, and I'm involved in a whole bunch of things on this mountain, and I'm not here to discuss that, but one of the things that does present itself to me in daily life is there's a whole bunch of expertise on this mountain, and they're all over 65, and they all like something to do. So if we can work that into our demographic, it'll be a great thing, because there's an enormous amount of knowledge and expertise out there that sits in front of a television, and it shouldn't be.
So we're having a look at what Fraser Coast are doing at the moment. Fraser Coast are trying to attract people to Fraser Coast who've still got a desire to work, albeit not on a full-time basis. They're bringing in people, and they're even struggling to do this. The reason the Fraser Coast is getting them is they've got accommodation, they've got caravans, places people camp and all that sort of stuff. So we will have a look, and we are trying to have a look at how we can do that. We're trying to slow some of our older employees down so they transition into retirement and teach some young people along the way. Some of the things that grader drivers at the moment. How many grader drivers don't we have?
3.
And how many do we have? 2?
We have 5.
5. So there's 3 grader drivers missing there. So if we can try and carry that sort of on, but take it on board, Stu, and hopefully we'll follow the Fraser Coast model.
Well, the salient point that I make is that I personally am to help in any way. Okay? The only got a phone, and whatever way I can help. And yes, I'm busy, but we're never too busy.
Yep.
And we need to, for those who complain about doing this, I relegated them to this nomenclature, to call it aortas, and they sit there and they say A ought to do this and A ought to do that. So we need people to get off their ass and do something.
Just don't include us in your submission.
Does work out and safety encourage that or discourage that? I mean, what's that process?
We're licensed and ticketed.
Oh, okay.
We need to cover them under the volunteers policy. This is why I want to go and get the stuff off Ken Dean, who's the CEO of Fraser Coast. Again, they've struggled over and over again to attract people to work there, so they're appealing to the retired people to come up, enjoy the Fraser Coast, but at the same time come and do some work for us, etc. Even if it's one day, that sort of stuff. So we can do that. Sorry?
I said you combine that with educating younger people in that skill.
Agreed.
I think one of the key things that council are looking at is the potentials around advisory committees and utilising that skill set. That's something that has been provided to council. So tapping in to that skill set that's within the community to being subject matter experts and getting that committee to provide feedback and necessary input to council to allow council help in making decisions. The committee don't make decisions, but it allows councillors to acknowledge and be aware of some of that skill set that's out in the community.
So I might just finish up. Everything that's been recorded will be placed on the internet. This hasn't been a live stream, it's simply been a recording, so we can place on the internet. We didn't have one for Bruno to do video, so we've only done audio on that one, and that will be placed on the internet as well. The Bow Desert one is already placed on the internet.
So will I get leaked?
You will get bleeding. Yes, that will just pixel. Right. It's important for us to get the feedback. It's good, bad, or indifferent. It's valuable for the councillors, and again, we apologise that this short lead up and changed process has occurred, but we can't change the date of the local government elections as has occurred, and this has really put us behind the eight ball very much. Keeping in mind too that basically the mayor got taken away in the first week to go to LGAQ functions and try and meet other mayors and whatnot through there as well. The officers will go away and continue to work with the councillors to try and make sure we come up with a whole lot of different options. There is a big realisation that the cost of living is impacting on everyone in all different ways. So that'll be taken on board at the same time as well. Again, what Oliver said, there aren't many local government authorities in Queensland that do this. It's compulsory in Victoria, it's compulsory in New South Wales. But it's very useful for us to go through that process. Please make a submission, use the forms that Melissa and Nicola have got up the back there. Make a submission, encourage other people too. I know that at least 50 or 60 people have looked at the video from Bow Desert, so there is, unless that was just you clicking on the wrong time. So please keep in mind this will go up, and can I say on behalf of Chris and Oliver and John, thank you for coming along tonight, and please make a submission, and thank you for the good suggestions as well.
Thanks, David.
No worries.
I'd like to give a plug for Small Business Month. We might have a screenshot, but there are, I think we're off, aren't we? We're still on? No. It's all right, it's not really for recording. If we can get that up on the screen. There we go. This is available on Council's website, and if you have a look at the things that are on offer within Small Business Month, there are seminars and information sessions there that don't only impact on small businesses. Something I get asked about 20 times a day is Airbnbs, and you'll see in there that there is actually an information session on Thursday afternoon at Conungra for short-term accommodation, not specifically Airbnbs, but short-term accommodation. You can go along and listen and participate in that presentation to find out what the requirements are for those people who do wish to run short-term accommodation business from home. But there are plenty of other options there as well. There's really something there that suits anybody who's got an interest in any sort of small business in the Scenic Rim, not just on the mountain. So they're not all available in every site, so you might have to travel for some of them, but they're quite worthwhile in participating in. So I'd encourage people to avail themselves of those opportunities.